about 16 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock. Welcome back to the Now Morning Show here on TTT. I am Natalee Legore. Now, you must be wondering what is my obsession with this blackout story. But it is because it affected every single aspect of our lives. If you're talking about security, if you're talking about business, if you're talking about your ability to connect. So at this point, we're going to be concentrating on that. Were you able to stay connected with your loved ones, during the blackout? So let's welcome the CEO of Digicel, Mr. Abraham Smith, to the Now Morning Show this morning. Good morning to you, Mr. Smith.
Hey, good morning, Natalie. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I always love to hear a guest to say that because it gets me so hyped to do the interview. So talk to us because...
It's early, but it's a great day to be alive. And thanks for
I agree with you. Imagine how we feel here every morning to say, we know it's early. But talk to us. Last week, Wednesday, we had a situation where the country was without electricity for more than 10 hours. And that had kind of a train wreck effect on others, goods and services, including our internet services. How did it affect Digicel as an internet provider?
Thanks for that question. Yeah, it was a tough day, and I think as tough as it was on us, it was tougher on all of the customers, right? And that's what we wake up and think about every day. On the day that the blackout happened, you wake up early in the morning to interview folks. We wake up early in the morning to make sure folks stay connected. And we know that hundreds of thousands of people rely on us to connect to their loved ones, connect to their businesses. Fortunately, unfortunately, when the blackout happened, it definitely had an impact on their lives. It had an impact on us too. Fortunately for us, our fixed network, our Digicel Plus network stayed up 100%. We were really happy about that. Now, of course, some folks in their homes, their power had gone down to their devices, so they weren't able to use it, but the network itself stayed up. On the mobile side, we also did well, though we did have sites go down. I think at the peak, about 8 or 9 hours into it, we had about 35% of our network was down. But fortunately, as best as we can tell, folks were able to stay connected as additional sites filled in the gaps. It did impact us.
Mr. Smith, what do you think were the vulnerabilities in the system for the people who weren't able to stay connected?
Well, I mean, first is with power going out, the way telecom networks are constructed, all of the core elements have 24-hour backup generators. Those were all, we had teams out filling those, making sure those were staying up the entire time. We also had kind of some core mobile sites that also had 24-hour backup. We also have the rest of the sites. We have battery backup. Fortunately, Trinidad's a place with a good electrical grid, and so we put batteries on those sites to handle, in typical scenarios, 4 and 8 hour outages. And so folks who lived in those areas where perhaps there was a concentration of 4-hour battery backup sites, those folks would have experienced some disruption.
So on a whole, for Digicel customers, is it that you're saying that you were able, after 4 hours, for everybody to be connected?
No, what I'm saying is as the outage progressed, sites were going down, but we have battery backup for the majority of our sites up to 4 hours. And so at the 4-hour mark, so folks might have noticed some disruption kind of around 5:30 in the evening. But at that point, we still had 80% of our network up. And then as the outage progressed, the rest of those sites had 7 or 8 hour battery backup. And so we didn't really see a whole lot more go down until around 10 o'clock or so. Fortunately, by then, by 11, power started coming back to sites from the grid.
Yeah. Is there any way that, as an internet provider, there can be safeguards put in place to kind of separate? I know you say that telecommunications, how it's set up, is that if the electricity goes, there is some kind of disruption. But is there anything that can be put in place to kind of separate the two so that, there's still connectivity even if there is not electricity?
So the things you can do are, one, ensure that there's secondary power. And like I said, in this environment, that typically is diesel generators. And so a good percentage of our sites do have 24-hour diesel generators available to them. That's a very expensive proposition to do that for every single site. And so the next thing that you do is put batteries on those sites, which the rest of those sites do have. So without power is impossible, but as much as possible, we try and make sure that we have between 4 and 8 hour battery backup, and then the rest with generators.
One of the things we discussed with the Minister of Public Utilities yesterday was the idea of RIC compensating people who would have, lost goods as a result of the blackout. Is this something that Digicel is looking at, or no liability because it was out of their control?
We work with customers on an individual basis. I know we've had some folks who had experienced extreme disruptions there, and we've worked with them. But a broad-based thing, since we didn't experience a broad-based outage, we don't think a broad-based compensation is what's being asked for from our customers. But on individual basis, when they call in, we definitely work with them.
In terms of connectivity, you said that up to 80% of customers are back up by certain hours. But overall, outside of the blackout, what is the connectivity like? I do have a Digicel phone here, and I was without service for the duration of the blackout, and I'm in Chaguanas. What is connectivity like for the network overall?
Connectivity, if we talk about network uptime on the mobile network, I mean, right at the 12 o'clock hour before we went into the outage, there were 0 sites that were down. So typically it's running at 100%. In your specific location, perhaps you're right in a spot where it was only served by one site that went down. But typically, the network is up 100%. The number of sites are up 100%.
Well, I'm definitely happy to hear that. So, being in Trinidad and Tobago, have you found that, there is a good system in place to operate the internet, to operate telephone, to operate cable connections?
Yeah, it's a good environment. I think we've got except for this outage, we have a good power network, and we have competition in the environment, and we have multiple providers for folks to select from, and so I think it's a great place to work. It is challenging for some of the remote areas. Especially as you try to connect fiber along the roadsides and the terrestrial routes. But other than that, it's a great environment to operate.
In terms of the fiber connections, do you find that is it more easy to disrupt it? How do we get those disruptions of the fiber optics?
So the fiber optic disruptions, the most frequent reason for a disruption are trucks hitting telephone poles and pulling down lines, and so that's actually one of our bigger challenges is dealing with that. It's very rare that it just simply fails. It's always the result of something external happening. And while there's resilience and redundancy for the core network pieces, the lines from, say, a pole to somebody's house, it's impossible to have 2 paths into that house. So if a truck hits that pole, it's going to go down. So one of the things we're doing there is making this next year is looking at all the key, we've kind of looked at all the hot spots where that happens, and we tried to place those underground as much as possible.
Okay, so are you looking to move the entire cable network underground over time?
I think that would be impractical and really cost prohibitive. So the entire network, no, but it's pretty clear once you look at the map of where outages occur, where that type of response would help. And so that's part of our development plan this next year. And it has been in the past. We continue to do that over time.
Okay. Any final words before we go, Mr. Smith?
Thanks everybody for the patience, and the biggest thing is a shout out to all the teams that worked hard through the night to keep folks connected, and they just did a great job, and I think that's the biggest thing I wanted to give a shout out to is our technical teams.
All right, Mr. Smith, thank you so much for speaking with us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
You're most welcome. Abraham Smith there, CEO of Digicel Group, talking to us about connectivity and how it was able to treat with that during the blackout. We take a break, but stay right there. We're coming back with more.